Anyway, you ready? You sure? As Kelton would say, buckle up, darling, we're going for a ride. Okay. Now, this is a challenging event. Not just because we all love Kelton and he's gone, but it's a challenging event because this is like where strange worlds collide. Because we have a mix of people in this room that know Kelton in very different ways. You know, some of us partied with him and did crazy things with him from the 70s on. Some of you know him from his Irish connection and all the stuff he did with the festival. Some of you know him from the North Texas Naturalist program. Woo! Okay, yeah. So you know him in different ways. You may learn some things in the next 45 minutes or so, or 30 minutes, that you didn't know about him. I mean, the book does contain a lot of risque things, and some people might say, is this Kelton? Anyway, it was. Okay, so bear in mind that you may experience what I'm about to say like three blind people holding on to different parts of an elephant, and each wondering what they have a hold of.
Oh my God!
Thank you. Bless you, my son. Okay, so we're going to start by, I've laid awake now every night when I wake up in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning or whenever it is. Since Kelton died, I've been thinking about Kelton. And I've been thinking about this moment, talking about Kelton. So I'm not using notes, but believe me, I've rehearsed this speech in my head 1,000 times, nearly 1,000 times. Anyway, what I want to start with was saying, we're here today not to bury Kelton, but to praise him. Okay? Yeah. Now that's what's called a malapropism, which Kelton loved. Taking a phrase and substituting something in it and, making fun with it. But he loved those things. So that's one thing about Kelton that I want to start talking about. We all know him for different aspects of what he did around us. Okay? But he was a bit like a gem. He had lots of facets to him, some of which were highly polished. And we all know what those things were. He was quick-witted, he talked, he loved chatting to people. But some of those were a little bit less visible to you, and you wouldn't have noticed him because of all the other things he did, kind of the noise he made all the time. So I do want to talk about some of that. So we know Kelton is a wordsmith. Most of you would have known him as quite a gabby sort of fellow. And he could talk to anybody. His early career, before he started doing some of the stuff in retirement, he was an oil and gas landman. As he would say, I go out and rob widows and orphans. But he could talk to anybody. And he'd go to some little West Texas town and chat to anybody and find out stuff. And he was as interested in them as he was in his work. So he's a very fun guy. And he had a real natural sense for talking to people and putting people at ease and doing it. So that was, certainly one of his strengths. And I think, from my point of view, he had a lot of emotional intelligence. This was a guy that knew how to talk to almost anybody and somehow get on their level. It didn't matter whether you were some redneck farmer that didn't want to give up your land, or you were a kid, or somebody he was trying to seduce, but he knew how to talk. So that's one of the things I'll always remember about him is how gifted he was. The other thing about him, and it's somewhat reflected in him doing the Master Naturalist program, he was a real scholar. This guy read all the time. In fact, if you ever lost track of Kelton, the first place you looked was a bookstore. And there you would find him reading War and Peace in one sitting. And you'd have to retrieve him. Okay. The other thing I say, he was a great lecturer. He was a frustrated teacher. Okay. And he got to do some of that with the North Texas Naturalist group. Talking to kids and teaching them about things. One time, I remember we were going to Houston for some stupid reason, who knows, in his car, and about just as we went up the I-45 ramp, I asked him a question about the Russian Revolution. We were in Houston before he stopped talking about the Russian Revolution. And that was without hesitation, deviation, or repetition. So he was a great reader guy. So that was the fun thing. The other one of the not so great characteristics about Kelton, we need to be honest about it. How many of you have experienced Kelton being late? Whatever, he's late. Now, on the flight over from London, I came through Ireland. I went through Dublin to make sure that there was a little connection back to Kelton. You have a lot of time, you know. So I did a little back of envelope calculation that this is the payback to Kelton. I reckon it's been 3 years since Kelton died. And we're finally getting to have a memorial for him. But I worked out he wasted 3 years of my life by being late. So Kelton, this is for you. Okay, so we're here. All right, some other things about Kelton. We all know he got in, he always loved Texas. I always thought he was from Texas because he lied to me about it. Okay, he's actually born in New Mexico. Okay, but in essence, he was a Texan. He loved Texas. So that was him. That was who he was. And he certainly didn't like Yankees coming down here and complaining about stuff. He'd damn near run them over the state line, getting them out of here. But he was a lot of fun with that. So he loved Texas, always interested, and then he got very interested in kind of the naturalist program, and he spent a lot of time in that. He was very dedicated to his community. He did loads of stuff down in Oak Cliff with Earth Day and just anything, cleaning up the creek or just helping out with this or that. He was always involved in that. He was a quick volunteer for things. He gave you a lot, but you lost a little bit in chatting to him for half the day. But in the end, you made progress. He was a lovely guy, and and he was into politics. Some of you may not have had political conversations with him, but I doubt it. He talked politics a lot. And he was really plugged in. He knew, I could be away for a long time and come back, and he'd start talking about Dallas local politics and which developer was ripping off the city, and it was great. I could get plugged right back in really quick with him. So he's into politics, and even I called him just before he died when I found out he was really ill, and in the middle of the first of all, was he a comic? In the middle of the conversation, almost the first thing he says to me is, he says, "D, I got bored with life, so I'm going to die." What do you say to that? And so he was so funny. And then he hope there's no Trump supporters in the room. He hated Trump. And in my last call to him, he's ranting about Trump. Says, "We got to get that asshole out of the White House." So we did that, Lee. But now I think we need to really celebrate Lee's life. We need to organize a new federal residence for Donald Trump. I was thinking someplace like Leavenworth. Lee would be very happy about that. Now, the other thing I bet you didn't know, but if you've got a book, you will know, he was actually quite creative in his own way. I mean, he's very creative with words and wordplay. Very hard to keep up with. Marty always hated us for it. Marty's somewhere around here. There's Marty. She always hated us because we'd gang up on her. And then Howard joined us, and it was hopeless. It was absolutely hopeless. But he loved words and stuff, but he also was creative in a different way that might surprise you. He could have been a cartoonist. We had these really rude, and now would be considered quite inappropriate birthday cakes. But he designed all of those, and he went into a little mom and pop bakery in North Dallas and said, "I know you normally put flowers and stuff on cakes, but would you mind putting giant willies?" And he made these incredible, bizarre panoramas, and he did it every year for about 10 years, and they were fabulous. And they built a whole second business off of Lee Kelton. When you went in, they'd show you all the nice birthday cakes. But if they thought you were a bit kinky and weird, they'd show you the Kelton cakes. And they sold a lot of really weird cakes. Anyway, so that was Kelton. He was a crazy guy. So if you're near somebody with a book, you can see him. Don't show them to women. Don't show them to children. And my kids are probably going to kill me when they see it because they're all into this kind of, how dare you put some things like that? You're not woke enough. You're not whatever. Yeah, I'm getting that crap. But, I'm going to say to them, they were very funny. And in fact, I would argue, and I can tell you now, that the women that were at our parties liked those cakes more than we did. We have photographic proof. Anyway, That's all, I'm going to close out by just saying, look, when I was talking to Lee, and Lee and I just had a natural chemistry from the moment I met him. And by the way, somebody asked me, I met him on top of a hill, a mountain, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We were both out there in 1975, met up, and somehow we just bonded and took off and kept going. And could finish each other's thoughts and sentences, and almost had our own silent language we could use with each other. And so I really miss him a lot. But when I was talking to him, I went off to England and started doing a lot of things, traveling around the world. And his last thing he said to me was, Dee, you've gone on to bigger stages. You've gone on to bigger and better stages. And I said, well, Lee, we could argue about whether the stages I was on were bigger or better or whatever. But I can promise you one thing. I was never better on any stage I was on than when I stood next to Lee. Yeah. He brought out the best in me, and I think I brought out quite a lot in him, and I know he did the same to you. So I am going to turn over.
Oh.
You ready to come up here and shout?
I said everything I was going to say.
Give a big shout to our next speaker. And let's hope she gives a big shout. Oh, wait, you have something. Somebody liked my performance so much they gave me a tip. Yeah, okay, wait a second. I'll get you one at the end if you don't mind. I've got one reserved for you. Okay, over to you, Mother.
I just, yeah.
Do we proud?
Yeah. I wrote mine. I'm not going to, God, that was good though.
What's that?
I wrote mine and read it once in the car, but it's short.
You're a professional.
Yes. But what? I'm Martha Heimberg, and I've known Lee a long, long time. In fact, it's really hard to talk about Lee. Can you hear me?
Louder.
Louder. It's hard to talk about Lee in the past tense because he was so alive. It really, I think, is. I think he would absolutely love it that we're up here yelling because we didn't get a mic or we're carrying his booze out. Oh, we didn't get a cop. But I met Lee nearly 40 years ago when our sons, Peter and Henry, were freshmen at Jesuit High School. At a new student and parent meetup, my late husband Yuri and Lee talked about their oil patch connection, and you've referred to that. Yuri was a geologist at Sun Oil, and Lee was a landman. And he was like a landman for hire. I think he worked for 100 different companies. And as you pointed out, he could talk to ranchers and farmers and get their land for drilling. As Yuri put it, nothing happens until that happens. And Lee knew how to talk. It turned out that Lee lived a few blocks from us in East Dallas, and our sons became good friends. I saw, where's Henry, who now is Hank. I asked Peter, when did Henry become Hank? He said, I don't know, he played football somewhere, probably then. So that was that. One day, after Peter had spent the night with Henry, he said next morning, just kind of talking, Henry's dad knows a lot about women. I'd never heard him say it quite like that. 14 years old. Like what, I asked. He said, well, how to say girls look good, I had to laugh because he was trying to sound like he'd heard a lot and then trying to say something else. I did learn that Lee was good at that. And like you say, he told everybody, women, men, and kids, how good they were, how they were special. He was really good at that, and he actually saw different things in people. He could spot that. I think that's how he talked to ranchers, and he never met a stranger. I mean, that's true. After Yuri died, Lee helped sort out some legal stuff, And I met his many friends at the Unitarian Church, all of his pals. Anybody here from that era? Okay, I mean, that was forever. This was way back then. By the way, our birthdays are 3 months apart. He was the April Fool, 1940, and mine's 7/11, 1940, the Lucky Craps, which we used to love. I got a free Slurpee. I went dancing with him once, and all of them. And boy, Lee really could dance. I could bust a move, but Lee was something else. I was used to like kind of just doing it. He didn't, you didn't do that. When he threw me out on a swing, I got yanked right back without falling or missing a beat. Now that's trust. And you felt like that. I think everybody felt that kind of physical trust around Lee. He was a big guy, and he had balance, physical balance and mental balance. And Lee knew Texas, as you know. From the dirt road that dead ends in a swimming hole, which he told us about, to where to get the best fried okra between Dallas and Kerrville, which I still go to. Once years ago, when my daughter Jessica and I were planning a trip to Arkansas through East Texas, he recommended a good cheap motel in East Texas with reliable AC and a pool with a shade tree, and even better, they scraped the sheets every morning. I will never, ever forget that image when you stop at a little cheap motel. Several years ago, Ron and I were going to Paladura Canyon. Where's Ron? Ron remembers this. Lee told us to forget the interstate and take a 2-lane highway after dark through ranch land. The bugs are going to splatter the headlights and windshield, but the sky is something else. He was right, of course. Some 30 or 40 miles down the empty road on a moonless night, we pulled over, swatted the whirring insects to one side, and looked up. I've never seen a more astonishing sky, not in Big Bend, not even on the Oklahoma farm when I was a kid. Stars so numerous and bright, I could clearly see the colors of the big grasshoppers and the prairie surrounding us. What a hell of a good universe we live in. Thanks, Lee.
As you all know Lee. I knew him since I was a little bitty guy. I remember him when he didn't have a beard. That's hard to do, right? Because most everybody here has seen him with a beard. So that's one of the reasons why I shaved the sides of this one. I keep this one for him. But the thing is that I've been told by my wife and people that know me that I am just like him. I've never met a stranger.
Yeah.
And every single one of y'all are family. So I've had about 3 years to try to figure out what I was going to say, but I love you all. And thank you for raising me. Because without you, Lee would have had one hell of a problem on his hands. I found a poem over the last 3 years. I've been looking for something, a toast or something, and it's just not big enough. It just never was. This is hard. The thing is one of the things, and you touched on it, Daryl touched on it, he never met a stranger. And anytime he talked to you, it was like you were the only person in the room. Because he touched every one of you, and he talked to you. And so he would say something to you, and he knew all the things about you, knew everything that you liked and disliked, and you thought the whole world just spun around. I forgot who it was that asked me, did you remember we went dancing? I said, I think I've danced with every single one of you at some point, men and women. I've gone to these places, the Irish Festival and the Green Hall, and I think at some point we did the Rio Frio and the Guadalupe River. And I remember the first time my mom said, "Here, son, you're going with your dad." Well, I went tubing down the Guadalupe River, and I showed up, and I looked like a barber pole. I was, black, white, red, white, all the way burned. Mom threw a fit. Lee goes, I told him, here's some sun lotion. He didn't want it. He wanted to drink and look at boobs. So, seeing Lee without a beard, remember him doing that, and I remember airplane models as a kid. We spent a month or two painting and building this remote control airplane that was on a string. Oh, it's supposed to be in the middle. Anyway, Richard, you're going to follow me around. So this thing was on a string, right? And we spent a month, he and I, building it in the garage in San Antonio. And he goes, "Kid, it's time to do it. It's time to go." So I was like, all right, let's go to the basketball court across the street. We get on the basketball court, get it lit, and it's one of those ones where you pour the fuel in it, and you start it up with a battery, remember? And if you stuck your finger in it, it would, Julian your finger, right? And me as a 10-year-old kid, I'm going, I don't know. Dad's like, So he flies it around 3 times, and he gets his grin on his face, and I remember it. I was sitting there thinking about this, and I remember the look on his face. He's like, man, that dive bomb the concrete. Oh my God, all I remember was 3 times around, that whirring sound, it goes up. It's like, oh, well, how long is it going to go? String got to the end. He turned it around because it's just a one handle. Turned it around, it comes down, he's getting closer and closer to the ground. I'm going, he better pull up. Nope. Straight into the concrete. That thing shattered in a million pieces. His look on his face was like, oh, cool, we do it again? No. I think that was it. The only thing we saw was the motor. The motor running around on the ground. Fast forward a few years, at the Unitarian Church doing the pancake breakfast, and he'd get in there in that commercial kitchen at the Unitarian Church, and he'd get in there and he was in his element. It's like, all right, I got the kitchen. You guys go do this. Here, y'all go do this. Here, hand this to you, and going there and flopping because he worked at Big Kips. Now, some of you are not old enough to remember Kips hamburgers. Some of you are, don't tell anybody. But that was his deal. It's like he wanted to cook. Just like at our house when we do, let's roast a hot dog for July 4th. He's over there and he gets the volunteers, the alpha males get around the board. Let's cook something. So Lee would do that, right? And so he would do that. And then the Guadalupe River, the Rio Frio. And then Martha, so wonderful. And you really need to bend her ears. She's got a great recipe for cold potato soup. I absolutely love that, and I'm going to get that from you before we leave, or at some point. Anyway, living at Goliad House, I don't know, the parties you guys, I don't know, some of you don't remember, but the parties at the house were always educational for a 12, 13, 14-year-old child, male child. Half-naked women, oh my God. Bounce house, wow, that's cool. There was always the Irish Festival, which was that second family which you were all a part of. And now the Master Naturalist, because, he decided that he wasn't going to work anymore. He had to fill his time. And I remember, Mom, I'm sorry, but Dad did say to me one time, he says, for God's sakes, can you come over to the house? Your mom has increased my honeydew list. I was like, what do you mean? He says, well, when I was working, I had a short list. Now that I'm home all the time, she just keeps adding to it. I said, well, if you finish the stuff at the top of the list, the stuff at the bottom will get closer to the top. He goes, yeah, you're my son, definitely. I was like, okay. So I do miss him. And all of you, thank you so much for showing up.
Great from the heart, Hank. Do you want to talk? Oh, well, we're going to open it up. All right. We'll do some of that. Okay. Let me make one point before I call you up. One of the things I did, this is the problem of not writing your stuff down there. One of the things I did want to mention is, we all know Kelton got highly involved in the North Texas Irish group and the festival and all that stuff. But in the 70s, he was sort of the Lone Ranger trying to do crazy things around St. Patrick's Day. So in the early days, we had this really scraggly parade in Oaklawn, which always ended at Nick Farrell's lounge with an Irish band. And Kelton was desperate to make that something worthwhile. And did anybody remember his kazoo marching band? The most bizarre thing. But it was wonderful. It was so bad, it was absolutely delightful. So, you know, he was influential in the Irish movement in Texas for sure. Anyway, so would you like to come up and say a few words?
Hi, new family. I'm Christy Kerr Leonard, and I met Lee with North Texas Master
You're
Naturalist.
gonna have to really project.
Okay, how's that?
Better.
Rose, you be my person. I'm Christy Kerr Leonard, and I met Lee at North Texas Master Naturalist. And I just quickly wanted to tell a story that I haven't told many people, except Richard Grayson. Is Richard still here? Okay, so Lee called me from the hospital, and I didn't know he was in the hospital or anything. He left a message, and I called him back as soon as I got it. And he said, I want you to give Richard Grayson a message for me. That Richard Grayson is one of the main Texas Stream Team guys, people. And he and Lee apparently were partners at Kid Springs, do water quality monitor testing. And he said, I'm in, tell Richard, Christy, tell Richard that I left the Kid Springs data on my desk. And I'm like, I didn't know why he was calling me. Apparently he just found my phone number before he found Richard Grayson's. And I said, well, you know, why don't you just tell him? And he said, well, I'm in the hospital and I'm pretty sick. And I don't know when I'm gonna get out, but it's probably just gonna be a week or so. And I think that really speaks to his dedication to his volunteer work. And apparently this was days before he passed away. And the fact that that was on his mind when he was that ill and facing, you know, death, that he wanted Richard to know that the data had been collected and where it was so that Richard could report it to the state. Thank you all for sharing Lee with me.
Well, I think we have one more speaker, or we're going to need to wrap it. There you go. You know, when we started organizing this thing, I thought, well, we're going to see some of Kelton's old friends. But I didn't think he meant it quite so literally. We're all getting old, aren't we? Anyway, so Lynn helped me write the book. She's the co-editor of the book on Lee.
I was with Daryl when he met Lee on top of the mountain. And soon thereafter, we were doing things with the Texas group and the Unitarians, and we started a multiple series of parties, many ending in food fights, many where you got a trophy the next morning, and one of them was one of our friends was given the title, I'd ask you to turn over, but I can't remember your name. I mean, that was kind of the debauchery that went on. And, you know, there were maypoles, there were trips to Ouray, where we came back in one of the worst ice storms, and we're coming down, what is that? From the Arbor.
Near Amarillo.
Yeah, well, no, we were coming, yeah, you're right. And the car, we went off the road or something, we had to get back on, and we start pushing it, we look up the hill, and there's a semi bearing down on us, and so we're running behind the little Mustang, all trying to get back in before the semi ran over us. You know, it's just, you guys know Kelton, I mean, stuff like that. And we would, when they lived in, Oakland? Where were you?
Well,
When
Goliad, or we lived up in Gaston first.
I can't remember, but there was just always something going on if these two were together. And they fed off each other. And one of the things I realized, knowing Daryl before he met Lee, is they both maintained a child inside. And they could go and be responsible at both of their respective jobs, but they had this kid that was always there, ready to come out and play. And so that brought the kid out in me and a lot of other people, I think. And, you know, that's one of the most precious memories I have of the two of them, is just how they were childlike and responsible adults. So nice to meet all my new family.
I think we have a representative from the North Texas Irish group. Is that? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It was about, I guess, 1988, 90, right at the early days. And I found out he was born on April 1st. My mother was born on April 1st. And she was the craziest damn person you ever met. So I thought, I'm in good company here. I don't know how many of y'all ever had the opportunity to go over to the 4th of July gatherings at Kelton's house. It makes what they do in Washington look like crap. We had fun. We cooked, we ate, and a few people even drank. They pointed out the fact that Lee was born not in Texas, but in New Mexico. Keep in mind, a lot of what is now New Mexico was originally part of Texas. He was fun. You never felt alone. Even if he felt the worst, he made you feel good. I remember the year we, at the Irish Festival, we got the Bishop of Dallas to come out to the Irish Festival. We had an Irish priest come to an Irish festival. Imagine that. And when he walked in, Lee said, I want to talk to him. Not like that, surprised me. The first thing he wanted to do was to ask the bishop to pray for his sons. His sons had served their country, and they'd come back with some issues that were not the best. And he got over there, and they got together, and I mean, I respected both men. Anybody that looks out for their children the way he wanted to look out for his, that's hard to argue with. I know he was a landman. Part of my family owned some property, and he was going to say, I'll go down there to South Texas and I'll find out about all this stuff for you. I always wanted to help you. He made you feel good. One of the wildest thing I ever did in my life was to go to Lee and LeBeau's wedding. A Druid priest marrying them. I tell you what, it was a blast, that's all I can say, what I remember of it. I miss the man. I used to go to his house. We worked on making the ceilidhs, stapling them together, mailing them out. And as some have said before, Kelton loved whatever he was a part of. And people who were a part with him, they loved him. He always felt like you had a friend. And even in his last years before things got so bad, he was always asking about me or asking about somebody else. He loved people. He loved life, he loved this country, and he loved this state. And he loved the Irish Celtic families. And I miss him, and I will always miss him. Thank you.
I'm Patricia Dillingham. I met Kelton in the 80s, and he got me involved with doing a lot of publicity for the festival for a number of years. He was so alive that I thought this kind of encapsulated what's happened. I don't know who wrote this. I didn't. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I'm not there. I do not sleep. I am the thousand winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I'm the sunlight on ripened grain. I'm the gentle autumn rain. When you waken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of gentle birds in circling flight. I am the soft star that shines at night. So do not stand at my grave and cry. I'm not there. I did not die.
So I don't have so many funny stories. I've got some serious things to say about my friend Lee Kelton. When I was a trustee of the Southwest Celtic Music Association, it is something that we really commit to as trustees, is putting on the festival. Kelton served as a trustee for several years. He was responsible, or did, serve as the leader for the teardown crew. All of those who served with the teardown crew with Kelton, raise your hand, and you'll see that there's a bunch of us who served with Kelton on the teardown crew. But that was only one of the things he did. He also volunteered and led, at some point, the setup crew before Mr. Sweeney took over. But I worked with Kelton on both the setup and the teardown. And one of the things that Kelton thought about was that people would show up on Saturday morning a little hungry. And Kelton tried to solve that, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Richard, can you wash the dishes?" And of course I said, "Absolutely." So Kelton cooked, and I washed the dishes, and we did that for 3 years by ourselves, maybe 4, could be 5, but that was taken over later, and at the North Texas Irish Festival now, they do the Saturday breakfast for about 600, 700 people, something like that. But Kelton was in charge of the teardown crew, and there was a year when I was there to help him, and we had rented a large panel truck. I remember the color was white when we started, but Kelton just threw me the keys and said, "Okay, go drive that truck over this place and over that place." And so I can drive a truck, maybe, in forward gears. And I did that. My wife is here, and she'll tell you that driving in reverse is something you shouldn't let me do, particularly with a truck. So I wish I remembered her name. Her mother was very responsible for the children's area. The Harkness. Okay. The daughter was in the back of the truck when I was backing up at Fair Park. And there is between the two buildings. And when I felt the other building, Karen was sitting in the back, and she said, "That was not fun." And Kelton said, "What did you do?" And I said, "You told me to drive." I'd never said I could drive in reverse. Kelton was my friend. Kelton and LeBeau invited me to their wedding. I had a wonderful time dancing on their dance floor at Herman's Hall. I had a wonderful, marvelous series of time at something called Burn a Dog for Liberty. How many of y'all went to Burn a Dog for Liberty? I mean, I missed that, and I have missed that ever since his passing. But Burn a Dog for Liberty was one of the highlights of my year. I got to meet all kinds of people who are nothing like me. First time I wore a different party political shirt, there I was, I think Lupe Valdez was running for sheriff for the first time, and she was at Kelton and LeBeau's event, if y'all remember that. And I show up wearing something that was highly inappropriate. But that was Kelton and Lee. That was Lee Kelton. He invited people, even people who thought different, acted different. Kelton was exceptional as an individual. And I hope that all of you, had at least one occasion when you and Kelton were doing something together. And I'm stopping there. Yeah, Lee would not stop there, but I am.
It's all true. All right, I'm assuming we're going to have to get out of here at some point. Do we have somebody who wants to do something? Yes? Come on down, the price is right. And while she's coming down, one of our old friends from the early days reminded me of the story. We had these parties twice a year. We had a spring fling, and officially this is the sprung flung today. It's the last one. And we had some parties called the fall ball. And there's a woman here called Darby who was stupid enough to let us do 2 of them in her house. And some really weird stuff happened. But anyway, that's a different day. So over to you, madam.
Okay. I've just got a quick one. This is kind of a story about the future. And I am not a hugely spiritual person, but I do believe that when you see a cardinal, a red bird, flying around, that it means that someone who has passed away has come to visit you. So a few weeks after Kelton died, I had bought a sympathy card to send to LeBeau, but I wanted to write something personal in it, so I was kind of waiting. So one day I decided to sit down at my desk. I was going to write the card, get it in the mail, and I heard this, and my desk is in the front of the house, I heard this crashing in the family room in the back. And I thought it was my dogs. I had 2 dogs. I looked down, the dogs are sitting at my feet. I thought, well, what is this? So I went to the family room, and there was a cardinal in my house, bouncing off the walls, going back and forth, and I thought, oh, there's Kelton. This is just something he would do. So it took me a while to chase the bird out. But now, every time I see a cardinal, I think, okay, he's still around. So I'm just telling you all, if you see a cardinal, just think it could be him, and say something to him. So.
Now, we are going to have to bring this to a close as much as we don't want to.
Wait a second.
Wait a second. You want to say something again, Hank? Okay. All right. I do have something fun I want to do. So.
Well, Lee would say stuff like, I remember one time he was talking to somebody and there was an argument or something. And it was one of the female guests that are probably not here. And so it's probably going to be Dariana. I was like, she'd say something Lee didn't agree with. It says, Dariana, I've seen you naked, be quiet. So he said things like that all the time. There's a couple of jokes I can't tell anybody because I swore I wouldn't say them because of my family's back there in the back. You have the Asir family that showed up. Joe Asir is the patriarch of our family, and then we have Mark Taylor. He's back there. He's the second in command of the family. Then we have Camille Asir, and her 2 lovely sons, and we have Leslie, who's married to Mark, and keeps Mark and everybody else in line. So we've got that part of the family. If you don't know, I'm an electrician, and fortunately, Tommy Eads showed up. And Tommy Eads is a heck of an electrician. He is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You need to get a hold of him to do electrical work because I'm in Oregon. Okay? So all of you guys that call Lee up and go, hey, isn't your son an electrician? Can you come over and look at his GFI? No, don't do that because it'll cost you too much for the airfare. So Tommy would be more than happy. This young fellow over here in the black and the flip-flops, he's got a whole crew of crack electricians that'll be more than happy to help you. Thank you so much for showing up. Uncle Howard, thank you so much for not saying anything. We all know Daryl can talk for all 3 of us, so he's doing a great job.
Just 3.
Thank you all for bringing stuff. For God's sakes, if you want some of this stuff, take it, because we don't have room in our refrigerator. So for God's sakes, please take that with us, and I appreciate you all coming. Thank you so much.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'd hire Hank as an electrician, because I visited LeBeau and Kelton's house over a period of 8 years, and it took 8 years to get the bloody electric sockets in.
Well, I'm a union electrician. I got to have, it's like the back. You guys been to the Burn a Dog for July 4th?
Yeah.
That patio took 12 people to engineer and me to build it because Lee would always do this thing. You know this stuff. Where's Johnny at? Or no, Kevin's already left. You know, the Irish Festival was always great because what he would do is he'd go, oh, we got this great thing we're going to do. By the way, what can you do? I said, oh, I can do all the things. And he'd be like, oh, well, you're in charge of this. So, you know, Kevin, he just got told, he's like, you know, hey, you're going to volunteer. You're in charge. Now you're in charge of the teardown. Somebody just found this phone in the women's
Does it have
bathroom.
any good pictures?
There's
Go to the pictures. Go to the
young-
pictures.
Well, I can't get into it. It's an iPhone. Check your phone. It was
If
in
you're
the women's
missing,
bathroom.
it's up here. Okay, listen, guys, we're going to close this out, and I'm thinking about doing two things. Okay, one is we're going to have a toast to him. Okay, whatever you got, whether it's water or Coke. And tonight is a full moon, so this evening, as the moon's rising, you can toast Kelton and have a little bit of a howl. Okay, that's a good warm-up from the second thing I want to do. And the second thing I want to do, I was thinking of all kinds of ideas. I was going to try to get about 200 kazoos and have you guys be the kazoo marching band, but that was a bit hard coming from England. I couldn't get them through security. But I did think something we could do, if you're willing to have a go, and you seem like a pretty have-a-go kind of crowd, that we stand up, and if you don't know the words, hum it, that we sing Always Look on the Bright Side of Life with Kelton. He would have loved it. So please stand up. And if Monty Python can do it in the life of Brian, you can do it. And we'll turn the camera on those people. Can you turn your camera around? All right. Okay. Everybody remember the song? Yeah? 1, 2, 3. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
Come on, you know more.
You know the words better than me. Go with it.
No, I don't. You got it.
Well, when you think of it, it's like somebody's shit.
Some things in life are bad. They can really make you mad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle. And they'll help things turn out for the best. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing. When you're feeling in the dumps, don't be chilly chumps. Just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. And always look on the bright side of life. Come on. Always look on the bright side of life. For life is quite absurd, and death's the final word. You must always face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your sin. Give the audience a grin. Enjoy it. It's your last chance anyhow. So